Kia ora and welcome to Sam's Take, a series about entertainment news and reviews with me, Sam Realstone. Today I'm looking at the first Marvel character to get a fourth installment, Thor Love and Thunder. Directed by Taika Waititi, the story sees Thor the God of Thunder, played by Chris Hemsworth, struggling to find inner peace and identity. He is swiftly returned to action with Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson, Korg, played by Taika Waititi, and ex-girlfriend Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman, who wields new power as the Mighty Thor. Together they face the threat of Gorr the God Butcher, played by Bale, who seeks the destruction of all gods following his daughter's death. This movie's Thor has a compelling journey. It's an interesting take on what do you do when you're the biggest gun in any battle, but you want to do anything other than battle. On top of the fact, you also want love, but not just any, a past love. It's a strong emotional core, but it's just overpowered by jokes. I find that Taika doesn't do sentiment well. He can't do it without comedy. Almost no scene in this film is without it. On one hand, there's nothing wrong with breaking the mold. It's great to shake up a genre or character, and that is the point of these last two Thor films, to break him away from the stiff Shakespearean thing. But you need to let your emotional beats breathe. I'm also personally not a fan of Taika's brand of comedy, and the sheer amount of it in this is immense. But if you like Taika's comedy, you're going to adore this movie, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not to say that I hated the film by any means. As a Thor movie, I think it's a good and natural, compelling progression for the character. Thor's search for identity, love, and a purpose following the Avengers was the next logical step for him, and is wonderful to watch. Plus, adding the threat of godly extinction certainly is a bomb under the table. But the plot is a bit paint by numbers. Chris Hemsworth is clearly still having a blast with the character and the opportunity to make big swings in terms of choices. As much as I don't love the material, Hemsworth's delivery of the comedy is compelling. But it's his emotional side of Thor that's more engaging. Ever since Ragnarok in 2017 and through Infinity War and Endgame, we've seen him gain and lose so much, and the impact it's had on him. We find him here just looking for some peace and some love, and Hemsworth delivers that emotional punch the story calls for. The return of Natalie Portman as Jane Foster / the Mighty Thor is so much fun and a great intro for the character. Mighty Thor debuted in 2014 as a mysterious new female Thor wielding Mjolnir. The identity of this Thor was eventually revealed to be Jane Foster, and she went on to become the mainstay Thor, while original Thor, now called Odin's son, was unworthy. Portman brings a freshness to Jane Foster that was sorely needed following her diminished role in the previous installments. Her stubbornness and want to continue the fight despite the consequences on her is compelling. Portman is having the time of her life and is super comfortable actually getting something to do because, she's Natalie Portman and she's great. Though the romance between Thor and Jane is hard to get into, it's been so long and not done well in the past that it relies on, and even breezes through their relationship in a montage. There is definitely chemistry there, and I like that they were leading into the romance and doing something with it rather than just damsel in distress, but it felt a little rushed to get to some payoff. The tragedy of Christian Bale's Gorr is epic, and he's definitely making some big acting choices, which is great because it makes for a creepy and unique villain that stands out. Gorr the God Butcher debuted in 2013, much to the same origin as in the film, a god-hating alien who comes into the possession of the Necro Sword. However, he obtains it from Null, the creator of the symbiotes like Venom and Carnage. Now, of course this origin isn't followed here, but to be fair, it would have made the story a little too bloated to introduce Null because he's a whole thing in and of himself. Bale's physicality and the cadence in his voice are full of intention and effort, but he's barely in it. And I know the story is juggling quite a few balls, but it just feels like he drew the short straw and his progression is a bit predictable. Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie offers a wonderful jolt of impulsiveness in the story. Her wit and sharpness is just as good as it was in Ragnarok, though again, she suffers from being a bit sidelined, which is a shame because she's a fun character and Thompson is a great performer. The marketing of this film suggested it was going to be another colourful Jack Kirby type aesthetic, but it wasn't nearly as neon or sparkly as I wanted, nor was there enough goofy, dumb space stuff. But it was fun to see Thor's goats from the 70s, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder. They're space goats. That's their comic origin. Also, the sound design, particularly with Gorr, is eerie and impactful. The use of whispers and ominous sounds whenever he is on screen makes it feel all the more immersive the way they creep around the cinema. Where the story leaves Thor is fine, but it feels like just a gag. A lot of things in this film feel like just a gag. Thor is my favourite Avenger, and Chris Hemsworth is so good at playing him, certainly now that he has room to be more playful. I'll be sad to see him leave the role whenever that does happen, but I'm excited to continue to see him in it, despite the execution around him not being exactly what I'm after. And at least it's not Thor the Dark World. So overall, I enjoyed the movie, just not as much as I'd like to. I wanted less comedy, and it's just the way it goes that I'm not a huge fan of the style of comedy used. The runtime is basically 2 hours on the dot, so a lot of things feel like they don't get time to breathe. But it certainly isn't a bad movie on the whole, and given the standard of Thor movies of old, it definitely isn't that. Chris Hemsworth hasn't missed a beat keeping this character going through his arc. Another solid Marvel entry for sure, so definitely a recommendation from me. Now I am going to get into a few little spoilers and post-credit scenes, so if you don't want to know anything about that, I'll see you in the next video. Right, spoilers. Jane died. I get that it's meant to be an emotional sacrifice and it's about her love for Thor, but you bring Natalie Portman back, give Jane this huge progression by giving her cancer, Thor powers, and just heaps to play with in the future, and you kill her. This is potentially because Portman only wanted to do one more, but it just seems like such a waste. And having Thor be like a pseudo-dad, uncle type person to Gorr's resurrected daughter was unexpected. Again, great to break the mold and do something different, but who she's going to be in the future is unclear, and who she even is now is a bit unclear. There's a slight time skip to where they are as the film finishes. They have a little house spaceship and are helping people and have a bit of a problem with discipline. But as with some other stuff in the movie, it feels rushed and played as a gag. Is she even going to be in future movies? Is she going to replace Thor if Mighty Thor isn't? Is Thor going to die? Well, he might. Because in a mid-credit scene, we see that Russell Crowe's Zeus ain't dead and is sending Hercules, played by Brett Goldstein, after Thor as revenge for his attempted murder. Debuting in 1965, Hercules initially was a foe to Thor, but soon develops a strong friendship with him and even becomes an Avenger. It'll be interesting and fun to see these two both fight and assumedly bond on screen, perhaps for their shared disdain of Zeus. Or maybe he will kill Thor, or Thor will sacrifice himself, or he won't. Either way, it's great to see Marvel pulling their deepest and weirdest out for this stage of the MCU. As for post-credits, we see Jane meeting Idris Elba's Heimdall in Valhalla. That's about it, and it's fine? It's nice to see Heimdall again, but it doesn't add a hell of a lot. But does it mean that we're going to get more of Natalie Portman in the future? Honestly, no clue. But as I said before, it seems like a huge waste to not keep her around as the new Thor, but hey, we'll see. We also got the cosmic entity Eternity, which debuted in Strange Tales in 1965. The leader of cosmic entities within the Marvel Universe, which includes Celestials as seen in Eternals, the Watcher from What If, and the Living Tribunal, which has appeared in a few different films and little Easter eggs. They're space beings that can basically do anything. Again, I'm loving the weird Kirby-era things that Marvel is dipping into, just making it as goofy as possible. And the continued inclusion of these beings is exciting for the overarching story of this next saga of the MCU, which seems to be going a bit more cosmic. And just on a final note, there's a Thanos-themed ice cream shop in New Asgard called Infinity Cones. Why would you make a commercial entity out of the being that literally committed genocide? I get it, capitalism, but if me or my loved ones were some of those that got snapped, I don't think I'd ever be able to eat there. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Sam's Take. I'll see you next time for more entertainment news and reviews.